Hello everyone, welcome to another video. This is Randy and I'm going to be doing a video in response to a video I saw by Richard McCook. Richard McCook is actually one of the first video channels, VC channels I started watching, and he recently celebrated 2 years in the VC. He's from Northern Ireland. Favorite artist is David Bowie, always having great countdown lists of his favorite singles or album tracks, or just a great channel to see. And I don't know if he intended this to be a thread, but in celebrating 2 years, he was showing 2 albums in a row by 12 different artists. So these would be albums that came consecutively right after each other, somewhere in their catalog. And I thought I would jump on, since I've seen several other people do this. And the first artist I'm going to show is wonderful Feargal Sharkey. He was at one time the lead singer for the Undertones, had a brief solo career. This was his first solo album that came out in 1985. And on this one, he had A Good Heart, which was a Maria McKee song. I'm not sure if she did it when she was with Lone Justice or later, but and You Little Thief, I remember both of those songs getting play on MTV. But it has kind of a unique voice. Some people may be into it and some people may not. This was on A&M. And then, like I said, that was his debut, and the next album came right after that, like 3 years later, I think. In 1988 was the album Wish. Features the single If This Is Love, Strangest Girl in Paradise, and More Love. This album didn't get as much play, at least here in the States anyway, and not near as popular as the first album. I don't think it's as good as his first album, too. But nice picture of him right there. Anyway, that's my first one. 2 consecutive albums by Feargal Sharkey, formerly of the Undertones. Next one is going to show us the hard rock group UFO. This is their album Lights Out, probably their best album. And they had the wonderful, I can find him on here, Michael Schenker on guitar. Later on, went on to be a guitarist for the Scorpions. This was on Chrysalis, came out in 1977. Wonderful, had a little bit of blues in some of their albums as well, but always an interesting hard rock group, especially for when Michael Schenker was there. He was also on this album too, not quite as good as Lights Out, I don't think, but Obsession. And this one was on Chrysalis as well. This one came out in 1978, a year right after the other one. Okay. Next one I'm going to show is one of my favorites, and that's the Pogues. And this is a Run Sodomy and the Lash, which came out in 1985. It was produced by Elvis Costello. That was a wonderful song, A Pair of Brown Eyes, which Peter Case later did a really good version of that. Also Navigator, Dirty Old Town, which got some airplay. Like I said, Elvis Costello produced it, and the bass player on here, Kate O'Riordan, he loved her and later married her. So anyway, this one is a really good album, but I think their next one is their best one, and that's If I Should Fall from Grace with God, and No Doctor Can Relieve Me. But this one was, I think, Warner Brothers, but this is MPI. I'm not sure. Kind of a unique label. I'm not used to this label. This was a reissue that came out. But this album was full of wonderful songs, such as Thousands Are Sailing, about immigrating to the U.S., wonderful song. Lullaby of London, The Broad Majestic Shannon, and Fairy Tale of New York, which got played around Christmas time all the time. And the title track I think is wonderful. But anyway, this like my favorite Pogues album, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Next is the wonderful Graham Parker. Of course, I have shown him before, but I don't think I've shown these albums before. And this is an album that came out in 1982, and that's another gray area. Like I said, Graham Parker started out with Elvis Costello around the same time. He was a little more R&B based, and he probably had his work in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and now is probably a little more consistent than some of Elvis's later work. Elvis had some great early stuff, but like I said, this is had the great song Temporary Beauty, which I know got some airplay on MTV, which is a great pop song, so it would have been a huge hit. Thankless Task is great, He Hit the Spot, but really good album. And this is when he was on Arista. And then right after that, the next year came an even better album, which is The Real Macaw, which had Life Gets Better, which another one should have been a huge hit. I don't see why it wasn't. And Just Like a Man, Glass Jaw, Passive Resistance, but just full of great songs. And that one was also on Arista. But okay, the next one I was going to show is a great pop artist. He had a knack for choosing great songs to cover, and that's the artist Marty Jones. This was I think her debut album in 1985, Unsophisticated Time. She had previously been in a group called Color Me Gone, and on this one, which was on A&M, she does a great version of the Elvis Costello song, The Element Within Her. She does a couple DB songs, Lonely Is As Lonely Does, and Neverland. But like I said, and quite a few songs by Don Dixon, who produced this album and would later marry her. But Don Dixon was a great producer. He had some really good albums as well by himself. But like I said, Marty Jones, great pop artist that's not that well known. Their next album was not quite as good, but it was called Match Game, and that came out in 1986. And yeah, I think it was on the different A&M label. But if you like nice pop music with a kind of a unique spin on, she's a great voice. I would suggest take a listen to Marty Jones. Next artist, and this is a shout out to Rob Walker, because I think this group was started in Manchester, and that's Any Trouble, the great Clive Gregson, who later went on to do some Americana stuff, but this is kind of a new wave-ish group. Had the song Second Choice and Playing Bogart, with two songs that got hit quite a bit of play. He even does a Springsteen cover, and Growing Up. Girls Are Always Right was good, but a lot of potential hits. It got some play on MTV, I know, at the time. This was on the Stiff Records label. And that came out in 1980, and then in 1981, the next one, it got a little more adventurous. It wasn't quite as the catchy tunes like on that one, and that was Wheels in Motion, their second album, and also on the Stiff record label. Next is the very soulful and kind of uses other soulful rock and other country influences, but he liked to take on a lot of not controversial, but serious subjects such as racism and other topics related to. He was has an African and Puerto Rican heritage, and looked at some of the tough trials that he went through. And this album came from 1977, called Ghost Rider. Rough and Ready, New York Skyline's a beautiful song. Spanish Town as well, but Escape Artist, which came later, is probably my favorite of his, but wonderful artist. This is on A&M. It came out, like I said, in 77, and then 78, or 1 year later, he had the album One-Eyed Jacks, which he dedicated to the memory of Jackie Robinson on this one. Looks like Sheets, and also on A&M as well. Like I said, really soulful artist that took on some serious subjects. He does the Bob Marley tune "No Woman, No Cry" on here. Good song, "Keep on Trying," "Been There and Back," but some wonderful, wonderful songs by Garland Jeffries. Next is the artist Ted Hawkins, who started out on Venice Beach as a street performer, and someone saw him and they did this album, Watch Your Step, which is wonderful. His voice, well, kind of a rougher Sam Cooke, but just a wonderful voice. And the blues artist Philip Walker and his band plays on most of these songs on this. And Bring It Home Daddy, Watch Your Step, the title track is really great. Who Got My Natural Comb, TWA, Sorry You're Sick, Stop Your Crying, but great all the way through. And this was on Rounder. This came out in 1982. Then in 1986, and 4 years later, found him again, I think still on Venice Beach, and came out with the album Happy Hour. This one has Dave Wilson on guitar, Augie Brown on guitar, Dennis Walker plays bass on that one. But he does the song Happy Hour, the old country standard, kind of makes a real soulful rendition of that. Don't Make Me Explain, it's a wonderful song. Cold and Bitter Tears, Ain't That Pretty, but just a wonderful, soulful album. And Happy Hour is, if you want to, as the song I would probably have you check out to see if you like Ted Hawkins, because I think he does a wonderful version of that. Next group is one I've mentioned before, because I'm a big fan of Paul Heaton, but I loved this first band actually the best, and that's the House Martins. This was London 0 Hole 4. This came out in 1986. Mixed a lot of ska elements in, and he does the song Happy Hour as well. It's a totally different song, but that should have been the hugest pop hit, and maybe it was over in the UK, but and Sheep was wonderful, but all these songs are very catchy and wonderful pop music with the ska beats, and this is on Elektra. Like I said, should have been huge. He later went on to the Beautiful South, which I love as well, but I still love his work with the House Martins, I think the most. And then the second album he did with the House Martins, which came out a year later, 1987, was The People Who Grinned Themselves to Death. Another great set of songs. I Can't Put My Finger on It, Me and the Farmer, You Better Be Doubtful. And it also came with a 45, which had the wonderful Caravan of Love, which is just a beautiful song. I think Richard's talked about that song before too. But yeah, wonderful group, the House Martins. Next one is formed in Australia, the Crowded House. This was their debut, which came out in 1986. Had a bunch of hits off here. Now We're Getting Somewhere, Don't Dream It's Over, Something So Strong, which they would never replicate those hits in the U.S. after this one. Had Neil Finn, who came from the group The Split Ends, the New Zealand group Split Ends, on here. His brother would later join him a couple albums later. But wonderful pop album in Crowded House. This was on Capitol. And then the album right after that, which I think is just as good, but was not as popular here with the hits. Anyway, it was the Temple of Low Men. Crowded House, Temple of Low Men, but it's backwards. Oh, there it is. Temple of Low Men, which the Better Be Home was really good. Never the Same. Into Temptation was the semi-hit off here, but like I said, it wasn't as big as the previous album. Like I said, in the next album, Neil Finn's brother, Tim Finn, would join the group, also from the Split Enz. Next as an artist, I think kind of gets a bad rap, and that's because, I don't know, maybe became a little bit of a parody of himself. But I love his early albums, and that's Jimmy Buffett. And this is Living and Dying in Three-Quarter Time, which came out in, if I can find out here, 1974. But it had some great songs on here, like Door Number 3. Pencil Thin Mustache is just a beautiful song. God's Own Drunk, but wonderful. Can't really read the writing on this, but it's on Rainbow MCA label. But wonderful, thoughtful, brings you down to Key West and some of those thoughts, what he sings about. And I think he even got better in the next album, which was my favorite of his, and that's A1A, which is the road that runs all the way down Florida, all the way out to Key West. It was also on MCA. But this one has probably my favorite song of his, which was Trying to Reason with the Hurricane Season. And the beautiful A Pirate Looks at 40, wonderful Migration, Nautical Wheelers, Tin Cup Chalice. Just chock full of, I think, wonderful, thoughtful songs, kind of a relaxing mood. But it kind of gets downplayed because he kind of became a parody of himself. But I think his early albums are just fantastic. And number 12, who's still hanging around, is the roots rock group, the Beat Farmers, which came out in 1985. Had wonderful country Dick Montana on there, but would do some of the more novelty like songs like California Kid. But a lot of great roots rock, rockabilly, Bigger Stones. There She Goes Again, which is what, Velvet Underground song, I think, or is it Lou Reed? I don't remember now. But this was a reissue that was on Rhino. But that was their debut album. Next album was called Van Gogh, which came out in 1986, a year later. And it has the great Gun Sale at the Church, which I think you can look it up. I think they do a live version on YouTube. You can find a really great song. Also like their version of Neil Young's Powderfinger. But wonderful album by a great roots rock group. This is when they signed to Curb. They signed a major deal after their debut. I'm not sure how long they lasted with Curb, but never did have the huge success that they deserved. But anyway, those are my presentation into Richard's thread. And hope Richard all the luck in the world. Congratulations on 2 years in the VC. Happy anniversary. And take care, everyone.